This is You've Already Been Hacked, recorded on 22 May 2021. This past week, one of the largest insurance companies in the United States paid $40 million. It was disclosed in late March to regain control of its network after a ransomware attack. The company in question, CNA Financial Corp. According to sources familiar with the incident, the Chicago-based company paid hackers about 2 weeks after a trove of company data was stolen, and the company was locked out of their network. A statement released by CNA was the company followed the law and that they consulted and shared intelligence about the attack and the hacker's identity with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Asset Controls. CNA posted an update on the 12th of May that stated, quote, "It did not believe that the systems of record, claim systems, or underwriting systems where the majority of policyholder data is, including policy terms and coverage limits, are stored, was impacted," unquote. Now, just to recap a little bit, in 2020, the average payment for ransomware was $312,000. That's a 171% increase over the previous year. CNA's $40 million payment is bigger than any previously disclosed payment to hackers, according to people familiar with ransomware negotiations. The ransomware that hit CNA is malware called Phoenix Locker, which is a variant of ransomware dubbed Hades. Hades was created by a Russian cybercrime syndicate known as Evil Corp. According to cybersecurity experts, Evil Corp was sanctioned in 2019 by the United States. However, attributing attacks can be difficult because hacking groups can share code and sell malware to one another, not to mention the peskiness of obfuscating where you're coming from. Interestingly, some other people that were also familiar with the CNA attack stated that the company initially ignored the hackers' demands while pursuing other options to recover their files without needing to engage the criminals. It took them about a week to realize, though, the company needed to start negotiations with the hackers, and the initial demand was $60 million. Payment, that $40 million payment, was made a week later, according to these sources. Where does this leave us now in 2021? Well, according to researchers and those in the insurance industry, the average ransomware demand is now somewhere between $50 and $70 million. Now, those demands are normally negotiated down, and frequently the amount that's paid out is somewhere in the tens of millions, mostly because cyber insurance policies now exist and cover some or all of the cost. CNA does offer cyber insurance. Do we all remember Solarwinds? I hope so. Well, close to 40 companies in the defense industrial base for the United States, also known as the DIB, reported that they were impacted by the Solarwinds supply chain attack. This coming from, according to Rear Admiral William Chase III, who is the Deputy Principal Cyber Advisor to the Defense Secretary and Director of the Protecting Critical Technology Task Force. This announcement came in a congressional testimony this past Tuesday as the Department of Defense is trying to secure its supply chain from hackers. Previously, suspected Chinese hackers were able to gain and gather reams of data on sensitive defense programs by attacking the networks of contractors and subcontractors that handle sensitive information. This is just an amplification of that type of activity. Now, the Department of Defense's cybersecurity maturity model certification, if it was fully implemented and battle tested, as it were, and hardened at this point, and these companies had level 5, it may have helped, but it is still a nascent program, so probably wouldn't have done much right now. Also, the CMMC plus the executive order that the Biden administration just put out, I think will, help things long term. Again, we have to see how it all plays out as we, um, with the euphemism, build this aircraft in flight. Uh, but these are good steps to ensure that the right type of things are done. We'll just have to wait and see if we actually are able to be successful. This is a game of cat and mouse and a mousetrap all together. Remember that other pesky hack that happened, the Microsoft Exchange server hack? Well, it looks like cybercriminals began searching the web for vulnerabilities related to Exchange servers within 5 minutes of Microsoft Security Advisory going public. According to a review of threat data from enterprise companies gathered between January and March of this past year, Palo Alto Networks, 2021 Cortex Expanse Attack Surface Threat Report, that's a long name, guys, uh, which was published this past Wednesday, says that threat actors were quick off the mark to scan for servers ripe to exploit. This is always the problem with public disclosure. It's not that we shouldn't, it's not that transparency is not important, but anything you say publicly can ultimately be used against you, and not just in a court of law. The bad guys know what you know at the same time. F-Secure stated that research they found showed that vulnerable servers were being hacked faster than they could keep count with them. So that's a problem. It's possible that general availability of cheap cloud services has helped advance persistent threats, but it's also helped cybercriminal groups and individuals take advantage of new vulnerabilities as they surface. Right? If this is the same thought process for general positive internet, right? Time to market, more infrastructure, stronger infrastructure, faster infrastructure. You can get your stuff done first. Cybercriminals doing the same thing, right? Same technology, just used for perverted means. Cloud computing is now so inexpensive that your would-be cyber attacker would only need to spend somewhere around $10 to $15 to rent some cloud computing power and start scanning the internet for vulnerable systems. And all they have to do is be right once to be successful. In that report released, the research highlighted that remote desktop protocol is the most common cause of security weaknesses among enterprise networks, accounting for roughly 32% of overall security issues, and especially problematic areas as many companies made the shift to the cloud over the past year, or, remote because of a pesky human virus, to allow their employees to work remotely from home. Okay, now that we've caught up a little bit on Solarwinds and on the Exchange server problems and what's come out of that, uh, one thing we didn't talk about that happened before last week's podcast is that AXA, an Asian operation that provides cyber insurance, was no longer going to provide cyber insurance. I believe it was in France, um, because of the ambiguity in some of what they could determine. Turns out branches of this particular insurance giant that were based in Thailand, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and the Philippines were all struck by a ransomware cyber attack shortly after announcing that they would not be covering or providing cyber insurance to certain areas. The Avadon Ransomware group claimed on their leak site that they had stolen 3 terabytes of sensitive data from AXA's Asian operations. The press also observed, and this being specifically Bleeping Computer, an ongoing DDoS attack against AXA's global websites, making them inaccessible for some time on or about the 16th or the 17th, depending on where you are in the world and your time zone. The compromised data attained by Avadon, according to the group, includes customer medical reports, uh, exposing their sexual health diagnoses, copies of ID cards, bank account statements, claim forms, payment records, contracts, and all the other usual suspects that we've seen over the past year for those that lose this type of data. The announcement from the ransomware group came roughly a week after AXA stated that they would be dropping the reimbursement for ransomware extortion payments when underwriting cyber insurance policies in France. Ah, see, I did remember that correctly, everybody. Well done. Now, AXA has stated publicly, quote, Asia Assistance was recently the victim, and Asia Assistance being one of their subsidiaries, the victim of a targeted ransomware attack, which impacted its IT operations in Thailand, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and the Philippines. As a result, certain data processed by Inter-Partner Assistance, or IPA, in Thailand has been accessed. At present, there is no evidence that any further data was accessed beyond IPA in Thailand. A dedicated task force with external forensics experts are investigating the incident. Regulators and business partners have also been informed. Unquote. What's interesting about this is it occurred also right around the time when the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Australian Cybersecurity Center started warning of ongoing Avadon ransomware attacks targeting organizations from an extensive array of sectors in the United States and worldwide. If you thought that traveling and your information was going to be a little bit more secure there, guess again. A remote access Trojan campaign targeting aviation and travel organizations has been uncovered. The campaign is harvesting screenshots, keystrokes, credentials, webcam feeds, browser and clipboard data, and a bunch more, using the Revenge Rat and the Async Rat payloads. Researchers from Microsoft announced this past week that it looks like spear phishing emails are the main attack vector. Now, we talked about spear phishing emails when it related to the Verizon data breach investigations report and how they seem to be one of the highest forms of compromise throughout 2020, and it looks like that's not going to stop. Individuals in the aerospace and travel sectors are being targeted with a range of gambits, such as using the ruse of needing transportation charter help. Now, if you know someone in the travel or aviation industry, one of the email subject lines is something along the lines of contract standby / cargo charter request. And in one version of the email, it says, Dear on duty. That should be a warning. We are searching for the cargo aircraft to fulfill the below contract. Flight shall be operated every day for 5 to 8 months of continuous operation commencing on the 15th of May, 2021. I'm sure that's been updated at this point. Other emails purport to invite targets to an official company event, such as a message pretending to be from Airbus. There's plenty of information on Async Rat and Revenge Rat, or what they, their parent piece of malware, Nyan XCat. So I won't go into that. But for those that don't know what a rat is, or remote access Trojan, think of it as remote desktop protocol. It is essentially the same thing. One is legitimate and one is not. When a rat payload gets installed onto a system and executes, it allows the attacker to remotely access that system and any sort of goodies they want to get to. The same way RDP would, but one you know about and the other you don't. And that really is the big difference. That's all for the news this week. I'm your professor of cyber risk. We'll talk again soon. If you like this podcast, share it with your colleagues and friends. Your support is how we are able to continue to make this content. Thank you.